This is Radio Ukraine International with the weekly program Doing Business, hosted by Rodion Zhiznievsky and produced by Konstantin Lavrentyuk. Doing Business covers current economic developments in and concerning Ukraine, gives topical information and immediate and longer-term economic forecasts. It is what we think might give you food for thought and help you see Ukraine from the economic angle. Babyn Yar has become a terrible symbol of the Holocaust in Eastern Europe. From 1941 to 1943, the Nazis shot 70 to 100,000 people in Babyn Yar in Kiev. They killed almost the entire Jewish population of the city. Roma, Ukrainians, Soviet prisoners of war, and patients of the psychiatric hospital were also killed in Babyn Yar. In order to acquire, study and disseminate knowledge about this tragedy, an international foundation was established to support the creation of the Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center. This non-governmental organization is building the first modern Holocaust museum in Eastern Europe, establishing a center for the study of the tragedy in which large-scale scientific and educational activities will be carried out. The Academic Council, as an important integral part of the Memorial Center, aims to develop a research strategy for the Memorial Center and monitor the compliance of the center's activities with the principles of scientific rigor and reliability. Pàtrīk Debua, who is the head of the council, gave us an exclusive offline interview after the press conference honored Babyn Yar 80th anniversary.
There are a lot of information about Jewish population that was killed during Babyn Yar, but what could you say about the victims of non-Jewish population?
It's simple and complicated. First, the investigations are not finished. There are a lot of things we don't know about Babyn Yar, like because it's a big shooting. During 2 days, it was apparently only Jews, so 33,000 the number. And after, 2 times per week, more or less, it was anybody. It could be gypsy, it could be partisan, it could be Christian, communist. That is not well documented because we have to work on it. And for the moment, we have centralized, me and my committee, we have centralized our investigation for the 2 days because it was already not clear. A lot of things are not clear. By example, where, who took the belongings, how they could extract the Jews from apartments, we don't know. And so what was not easy for here is that they were thinking I would release a big list of Ukrainians. And I cannot say that because for the 2 days it was a German affair. It was not an Ukrainian affair. So I cannot say, and everybody asked me about collaboration. It's a term that has been used in the West. And here it's completely another situation. We were in Soviet Union, we're not in Ukraine first, so freedom didn't exist. It was very complicated. And the Germans used the Soviet system to force people. Me, I know that because I have filmed 8,000 people of Soviet Union, ex-Soviet Union, from Lithuania to Azerbaijan, and Russia the same. So you have the same system everywhere. You have the Germans are making a requisition. They use the Soviet system of requisition with the disseminate, with the starost, with the Soviet, and to say I need tomorrow 70 diggers, 3 cookers, etc., etc. People have no freedom. And so the requisitions have never been considered guilty, even in Soviet Union. People who have been considered guilty by the Soviet is the Polizei or the Staros, but not the people. But me, when I show a digger, people say, oh, it's a collaborator. I say, what do you mean? It was Soviet Union.
Right.
And the German, so after you had Ukrainians who engaged in Polizei and really participated to many things. But for Babyn Yar, the 2 days, it's not. There are second role. And me, my hypothesis is that the German didn't want to split the money.
Yeah, but in most Ukrainian media it said that locals didn't participate at all, so that's kind of controversial stuff.
The problem is you cannot say at all, but it's a slogan, you know.
Right.
You must study piece by piece. We have a few Ukrainian names who have been involved, but more in extracting the people from the house, that's it. For the moment, we have nothing else.
Right. And the very last question about USSR power. Why did they hide that information, how many people were killed?
There are different reasons. First, Israel was created in 1948, and the Soviets were thinking that Israel would be a pro-Soviet country because Ben Gurion was Soviet, etc., etc. But when they saw they took the American side, they began to hate the Jews completely, and they rejected every Jewish structure. It was the first reason. Second reason, they didn't like, we say, somebody was killed because member of a minority. Everybody was Soviet. So they called them innocent Soviets. It was like an attack to Soviet Union, to the strength of Soviet Union. So today it sounds strange. Me, I came in Soviet Union. We had shows, we saw the 23 minorities dancing, but you couldn't say this guy is not a Soviet. Everybody was Soviet. And so they consider, also in Soviet Union, they say we had more than 20 million victims, so we don't want to recognize anything special for the Jews. And it stays today in Russia.
You're listening to Radio Ukraine's weekly program, Doing Business. Andrej Umansky is a research fellow at the Institute for Criminal Law and the Criminal Procedure, University of Cologne.
So I am born in Kiev and spent the first years in Kiev as a child. And I grew up then in France and in Germany, where I am now a criminal defense lawyer and a historian. And I'm working now since more than 15 years with Father Pàtrік Debua and with the organization Yahad in Unum, where we're searching for places of mass shootings of Jews, Roma, Sinti, disabled people and others. And we're recording the interviews of the neighbors of the shootings. And in the academic council of the Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial, I am already since quite the very beginning. I was invited by the former director, Jana Barinova. So when I had the chance to help the team since then and advise them.
If we move directly to the tragedy that happened in 1841, who is responsible for the mass killings in Babyn Yar on that time?
So we know it's very quite good worked out that the main perpetrators here are German units. So it is a crime committed by Germans and all kind of different units because you needed a huge amount of men to kill this number of Jewish people in Kiev. So this is why you had not only the SS, the Sonderkommando 4A from the Einsatzgruppe C, but as well 2 police battalions, Waffen-SS units, and then as well Wehrmacht soldiers who would help. We estimate that at least 2,000 German men were complicit to this. Some of them were shooters. Some of them helped, for example, escort the Jews from the houses, those who wanted to go voluntarily, and others, for example, would be there for the whole logistic, like food, drinks, ammunition, and so on. And we are working now on the list of the Germans who participated in this, and with documents that we find, we can prove their participation. So not only that they were in Kiev in those 2 days, but that as well they had a special task that is related to the mass shooting of the Jews in Babyn Yar.
Are you going to publish the list of the names of those people who participated in mass killings and how it's going to be organized?
So we started already. You can find on the website of Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center the first 100, even 61 names we have now, and it's an ongoing project. So we'll follow up, we'll put the names if we find more information, and you'll have the name of the person, the age at the time, where the person was from, and later we want to add as well the role of this person and, of course, in which unit is served. But first of all is to show the huge amount of diversity of the perpetrators. They were young, they were old, they came from all over Germany at the time and from different backgrounds, and they all participated in this because we need as well to show the identity of the perpetrators, because many of them, unfortunately, were never bothered by justice after the war. So only 5 SS men were sentenced either to death or later in West Germany to prison. sentences and only one policeman. So in total, 6 men of at least 2,000 were tried. And all of the others, nothing happened to them. They could lead a normal and quiet life after the war.
But would it affect somehow the relatives of those people who actually had nothing related to it? I mean, how would it affect?
I think, first of all, what's important is we need to tell the names of the perpetrators. Very often, if today you will ask someone in the street in Germany who was responsible for the Holocaust by bullets in Ukraine, let's say, I think usually if the people would say something, they would usually come up with 3 names: Himmler, Hitler, and Heydrich. But those 3 men weren't in Babyn Yar in Kiev, end of September 41. They didn't plan the shooting. All of this were done by other men. And it's important to tell the names of those who committed the crimes on the ground, so that we see that not only a handful of persons was responsible for the Holocaust by bullets, but a lot of different men accomplished this. And then I would say the problem is, as well, is that the memory of the Holocaust by bullets is fading away, and especially in Germany, nobody knows what happened in Babyn Yar. If you would ask someone in the street, and because I'm teaching in Germany as well history to students who will become later teachers in a gymnasium and high school, they don't know what happened in Ukraine during World War II. And same thing as well if you would ask someone in the street. People know Auschwitz, people know that the Holocaust happened, and it's important for the German society today. But unfortunately, the memory of the Holocaust by bullets is really weak in Germany. So this is why I think this is more important. And a lot of generations, young generations right now, are very interested what happened to grandpa, what he did. And there is a lot of stories that are uncovered and a lot of families that are asking us as well, could you please find out what my great-grandpa did during World War II?
Just why I'm asking, could be some revenges from the relatives of people who died during Babyn Yar related to people who are great-grandsons of people who executed them?
I don't think so. We're far away. I think that the people that lost relatives in Babyn Yar, they are more interested in to know exactly who for their relatives died in Babyn Yar. So what I mean is we have as well another project that another team is working on, the names of the victims. I think for the families of the victims, what is important to know is who from my family died in Babyn Yar. Because the Germans didn't do any names list when they killed Jews or any other in the occupied Soviet Union. This is the big difference between France, Germany. Those Jews, they were deported to Auschwitz mainly, and we have names of the victims. We know more or less who was brought to Auschwitz or other camps. When it comes to Ukrainian Jews, for example, very often we don't know exactly who was shot here, who is in the mass grave. And very often families families are writing to us, Yahat in Unum, Father Desbois and me, and ask, I want to know if grandpa is in this mass grave. So this is why this other project, the Names of the Victims project, is so important, to give back the name of the victims so families knows that their relatives were killed in Babyn Yar. But on the same time, we need as well to know who were the perpetrators. But it's 80 years ago. So the perpetrators would be now 120 years old. I don't think that families of the victims are interested in the families of the perpetrators who are now in the 4th and 5th generation.
And the next, my question, it's pretty controversial part as well. And that what I already asked Father Pàtrick. Could you tell us if Ukrainian nationalists or police officers or someone else were involved in such procedures?
So of course, yes, we know that Ukrainians were involved. Policemen, but as well civilians who wanted to profit from the situation and would denounce their Jewish neighbors, of course. And we will work as well on the names of the Ukrainian participants. But in Babyn Yar and Kiev, you have to analyze each shooting in Ukraine individually. In Babyn Yar, the participation of Ukrainians is not important. They weren't on first roles or even second roles. The shooters were all Germans. The checkpoints at the end, all Germans. So all the important tasks in Babyn Yar were done by Germans. It's a case for Babyn Yar. There are, of course, other places in Ukraine, other shootings in Ukraine, where the role of the Ukrainian police is much higher. Understand? More important. But in Babyn Yar, I would emphasize to the historical fact that most of the work, and especially the important tasks on the ground, were done by Germans. But again, of course, those from the Ukrainian side that we can identify, we certainly will as well work on their biographies and publish it as well. But again, we're what I want to stress as well, we're not just taking names from lists. We're really crisscrossing information, and because I'm a lawyer, so I don't like to do hypotheses and say, okay, all the men who were in this and that in the Sonderkommando 4A participated. We have to be sure. So we need to look at the documents. We need to see what the interrogation files are saying or other documents that pinpoint those people, and then we can publish it. And the same goes as well for Ukrainians. So I don't know how much we'll find out about the Ukrainian participants, but I'm certain that we will find some of them who were on
Just let me clarify. You said that you're going to publish the list of the names of some of Ukrainian executors, right?
Not executors. Again, I'd like to stress this out. We will as well, if we find Ukrainians where we can prove their participation in the whole operation. For example, we know that Ukrainians were tasked to put the posters written where the Jews had to meet at a certain point. You know, the posters that were prepared by the Germans. So we know that Ukrainians had to put them all over the city. So again, those are minor tasks in the whole operation. So this is why when you say executioners, it's not correct, because they weren't at the shooting place. The shooters were all Germans.
Apart from the Jewish population, there were a lot of Ukrainians killed in Babyn Yar. What is known about the non-Jewish victims of Babyn Yar? And is there any number of the total death losses?
It's a really great question that you're raising here. Unfortunately, we don't have the full picture of what happened after Babyn Yar. The ravine was a place where weekly people were killed, all kind of people, Jews, communists, disabled people, homosexuals, Ukrainians, and so on. And we know that in 42, for example, every 2 days per week, there were either shootings or there was a gas wagon used, what the Ukrainian or Russians call dushegubka. The Germans had as well a gas wagon that they would use in Kiev. But as Germans did the counting in Babyn Yar, and very precise counting, because if you see the number, 33,771 person, they didn't do the same with the other shootings or gassings. So we can only estimate, unfortunately. And the estimates are very wide. So the Soviet Extraordinary Commission, who was in Kiev in 43, estimates at least 100,000. Some are going even to 200,000. So I would say this is the work of the historians that need to be done. I think there is a lot of unwritten pages of the history of Babyn Yar and Kiev during the occupation of World War II. And I think this is something that will be done in the next years to find out the same as we're doing for the shooting of the Jews on 29-30 September 41, as well what happened to other people in the following months and years, and who was killed. Again, disabled people, for example, as well. It's a very unknown chapter, unfortunately, but I think it will change in the next years.
You're listening to Radio Ukraine's weekly program, Doing Business. There are other questions that I wanted to ask you about all the things that happened that time. And what I wanted to ask, it's about the role of USSR in all this tragedy. As I know, there is some kind of fact, or probably misconception, that USSR tried to hide the consequences of Babyn Yar. Is it really true?
Yeah, so it depends from what we call exactly consequences of Babyn Yar. So what the USSR didn't reveal and didn't want to show in the years after World War II is the identity of the victims. So the politics in the USSR were that there shouldn't be a group of the Soviet population that should be upheld in comparison to others. So we shouldn't talk about that mostly Jews were targeted by Nazis or Roma or disabled people. So this is why very often if you would have memorials, and Soviets did some memorials here and there of Jews or Roma, they would just put on the memorials peaceful Soviet citizens are killed here. So this was the official term. But on the other hand, of course, the fact that Nazis killed so many people during World War II, Soviets would use this, of course, as propaganda measures. So, of course, in Babyn Yar, we know, for example, that already in 1943, when Kiev was liberated, very quickly Soviets would invite journalists from United States and other countries to show Babyn Yar, to show what happened, but not, of course, to show what happened to the Jews, but to show that Nazis committed crimes. So they used these facts for their own agenda, their own political agenda.
What's the reason why they tried to hide the fact that exactly Jews were killed during this?
Yeah, again, as I said, you have to imagine Soviet Union at that time and already before in the 1930s was a country with a high anti-Semitism. Jews were not only pushed out from public life, from different professions, but it was even sometimes, they paid even this with their lives. So sometimes being a Jew in Soviet Union was even quite dangerous, especially during Stalin time. Even afterwards, there was always a latency of anti-Semitism throughout of the country. So this is one of the factors. Nobody wanted to give Jews the role of the victims and to accept as well that when Nazis occupied the Soviet territory, those who they would kill systematically were only Jews, Roma, Sinti, disabled people, and so on. And they didn't want to accept this. So, but on the other hand, they wanted to show that there were so many victims. So this is why they always talked about civilians that were killed. They wanted always to have a big number, a high number, and they wanted to show that Nazi Germany was targeting Soviet civilians. All Soviet civilians. So this was the idea, to turn as well the history around and show what happened during World War II. So there were several factors, I would say. So first, anti-Semitism, but then, of course, propaganda policy of history writing for the usage then, because you have to understand that after World War II, you have the different blocks. Western Germany is in the Western bloc. So Soviet Union, of course, always used the narrative of the war, of World War II, to try to show again and again that Western Germany is responsible for what happened during World War II. And of course, for this, they used all kinds of crimes, like, for example, what happened in Babyn Yar, but without admitting that in September in Babyn Yar, the people who were killed were Jews.
The work of the Memorial Center is based on strict scientific knowledge. Historical materials undergo independent review and are approved by the Scientific Council, which consists of 3 prominent experts from different countries. The principles of working with the past are enshrined in a document entitled The Historical Narrative, which is available to all. And here at the end of the first part of the interview with Andrej Umansky, who is the deputy head of the Academic Council of Babyn Yar Memorial Center.